First and foremost, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank everyone for being here. This is the first event we've had, which is face-to-face, which is inside the museum, after a long time. So thank you so much for being some of the first who's come and supported us again. So in the coming months. But in the meantime, we have here, so this is our first face-to-face event. It is also going online. It is also being streamed online. And our last opening was in 2021 for the exhibition Do It and our AFI project all the way in Lukban at PSP, Project Space Pilipinas, and Cinepop in Quezon City. We have since been working on projects that have challenged the online platform. And this we have done as a way of rethinking the production and the making of exhibitions, especially contemporary art exhibitions, not just locally, but in a wider scale. And this rethinking and this challenge that we've had for the past 3 years has led us to invite Derek Tumala, who is hiding behind the column, to work on this year-long project with MCAD, which is entitled Tropical Climate Forensics. Derek is well known for his new media projects, and I was made aware of his inclination towards this practice very early on in 2013 when he was doing 3D mapping of projections as part of his thinking through art making. But Tumala is now more clearly inclined and incredibly much more rooted with new emerging technologies, the moving image, industrial materials, and objects. His art practice revolves around the realms of science and nature, meditating on the idea of interconnectedness. And by forming ecologies and systems of thought, Derek practices mutuality between human and its built and natural environments. So this is one of the reasons that we invited Derek for this project. It was because of our engagement with a lot of new media practices. This project of tropical climate forensics is also part of a much larger exhibition which goes across 28 institutions around the world, which is part of this project called the World Weather Network. And it's a constellation of weather stations between 29 art agencies around the world, and it's an invitation to look, listen, and learn. From June 21, which was the winter solstice, to June 21, 2023, artists, writers, and communities will share observations, stories, reflections, and images about their local climate. So Derek's practice is a fully online project, which will be later realized on a physical exhibition. So I think instead of me going all the way into explaining what the project is, I'd like to introduce Derek. Derek will speak not just about the exhibition, but also about his practice as a new media artist. Derek Tumala.
Hello.
Just some ground rules for the meantime. After Derek's talk, there'll be a Q&A. So if you have questions for Derek, please write them down and we'll ask. Okay.
Thank you. Hey. Hi everyone. Thank you for coming today. So as what Yaya said is we're going to talk about the project Tropical Climate Forensics. And so before I start this presentation, as Yaya said, my art practice revolves around new media, working with technology, and intersection of art and technology, and also science and research. So there's a lot of elements that goes into this work, and the works that I do, which is a lot to do also with science. And as you know, art and science are two different things, and when you mix it together, actually, it's an interesting format. Or for me, it's actually a new way of seeing things. So this project is about the climate. Is I think very current, and we talk about from the word forensics. So it's about investigating in a way, but also in putting a lot of technical and artistic gesture to it. And I just also want to say that I'm not a climate expert. I am an artist and I work with science a lot. And this project, I think, gives me a more representation of science and art working together. So I have this recurring interest in weather. So some past works that I did are actually about weather and simulating weather or illustrating weather. And I did this presentation coming from a lens of art making. So in general sense of openness and how to explore climate in the local context, how it can look like. I wanted to explore the idea of forensics. So when you say forensics, it's actually a form of truth that can be anything actually. It's investigative work. It can be experiential, or it can be visceral truth as well. So this is the material of the work for this project, which is about climate change, climate crisis that we are experiencing right now. And one of the core material of this project is actual science. So I actually did a lot of scientific research. And I know this is an art project, but I think by mixing it together, I think it's actually became like a stronger work for me. And I have considered using scientific research as vital to this project, and also different sources of information, such as personal experience, artistic work, such as film and literature, online links, information, informal discussions, social media, conversations with scientists, climate activists, disaster survivors, climate change advocates, NGOs, government units, policymakers, and civil society, and a lot other more types of people. So we're trying, I think for me, I want to cover everything that I can, like in a forensic manner, that you're trying to look at it at all angles, or maybe on another angle. And I think so. I'm going to share on how this project came about. What are the prompts for this work? What is the agenda of this project? And I think why is there a need for an infrastructure like this? So I want to say that it's an infrastructure because for me this project is also about world making, and how I see the climate crisis in totality as a whole, and also as in a Philippine context. So how climate crisis is actually a huge part of our daily lives that we don't even realize. And with this project, I realized several prompts that I learned over the months of researching on this, and which are awareness, mitigation, and adaptation. So I think the scientists also are talking about a lot about awareness, mitigation, and adaptation. So all the papers I've read, or books, or people that I've talked to, their concern is this three, which is awareness, mitigation, and adaptation. The main question is like what really is the climate crisis in the Philippines. So I also want to mention that I had a residency, an artist residency at Manila Observatory, which is a scientific institution. So it's actually the first one. I was the first resident in that residency, which is initiated by Art Fair Philippines last year. And we had like an exhibition last February or March. And I think it's interesting to see like science work inside an art fair, which I think kind of disrupt the image of what art can be. You know, because I think art for me is it's about being open. So it's about openness to a lot of possibilities, and I think one of that is using science in art making. So yeah, from that residency, I found this article that questioned about what ails the Weather Bureau. So I thought like maybe I can ask the same question like what ails the weather. So this is from 1960s weekly newspaper column by Benjamin Defensor, which is a critique of the Manila Observatory during that time. So they're trying to like critique the Manila Observatory and how can it be a better institution for weather forecasting. So I found these clippings from the Manila Observatory Library and the archives, in which I found the archives as fragments of history that tells me of how our life coexisted with the weather. So there's so much narrative that actually not being told, and I think it was a gold mine for me to actually explore on, and there's a lot of stories that are actually important to tell, like especially from the past. Like these are well documented scientific institution that did a lot of work on science, and I think Philippines is not known about its science because I think most of our scientists are not well funded or being supported. So I think I thought, what is actually wrong with the weather? And I found that there are so much narratives that are not being talked about. And one is the local in context and the history itself of looking at the weather. So how do we actually look at the weather? And I thought there was a need to learn and share more about this because the weather we experience it every day, and yet we don't actually know a lot about it. And the idea of the climate crisis is always about fossil fuels, melting ice, heat waves, which is, I think, a very global north context or a very Western context, because I think they are more effective in communicating these ideas. And I think our context or narratives are less being discussed. So when we experience so much heat in typhoon, it feels like it's normal because we're in the Philippines. But it's actually, it's not true. We should not be experiencing this. So, in the artistic perspective, I intended to create a work that decolonized the idea of a climate crisis, which is largely communicated in a Western concept. So it's always about polar bears. That's like melting ice. That's all the. I think there's more. Those are the visuals that are more familiar to us, even if we live here. When we thought about climate change, we think about melting ice, which is actually not the only thing. So yeah, so when I was thinking on how to go about the project with MCADS, which is an art institution, so I thought, how should I present the climate crisis in an artistic way, but also using research as a core of the project. So I think an art science project may have its push and pull, as the two has very different agenda. So like science is very exact, and then art can be very open, it can be experimental, it can be anything. But if I found a similarity in both, which is like both art and science are actually about examining life itself and looking into it. So I think there's a lot of consideration also that I do on how to use scientific research on this project. So in a way that it respects the information and knowledge from me. And also how can I present this in a way that it opens up the possibilities of new narratives or worldviews through art. So it's like a gesture of accumulating things and absorbing, extracting. So this research also I try to gather mostly from a local perspective and trying to talk to as much people who work on climate and what's related to climate or has experience with climate. So there's
a lot of papers on anthropology, could be climate reports. So been going to archives, library, and then went to meetings with scientists, with artists, or with actual workers on the ground who works with the climate. So I think I'm trying to like capture how it is in totality and how it's looks like right now. Like that, why do we have the enough like system to actually make it work as well? So yeah, I've been doing like a lot of meetings, going through archives, trying to illustrate some of the studies that doesn't have visual representation. So I made this. It's called Pilaton. It's like Ivatan way of looking at weather through the stars or horoscope. So there's actually we already have like zodiac science during pre-colonial times, and that's how they actually predict weather during those times. And then yeah, we try to also create like visual representations of science and looking through archives, and then like a lot of these also came from Manila Observatory and Lopez Museum. So also trying to trace documentations that on disaster as well. So what I also did on this project is to also explore different places or institution. So one of the places is Pag-asa. So I went to Pag-asa and meet one of the scientists there, and then she showed me the archives of surface observations. So these are actually manual recording of the weather since the 1950s. So these are like 5 million papers that are trying to digitize now to prove one point.
which is to prove that there's an anomaly in temperature. So there's actually temperature rise from 1950s to now. So it actually took a lot of effort just to build this evidence. And I think I really appreciated the work of science when I see it. And this is how they do it actually. This um, very tedious work that they do is very important. And the product of this digitization is actually to produce a tangible evidence that there were temperature rise since the 1950s. So they just want to prove one point, and that's that there was a temperature rise since the 1950s, and it takes like almost 10 years now just to build this, and they're still not done, and they're doing this now and trying to finish it in 5 years. So that's that the thought of it just to build one evidence is just really amazing to me. So one also of the places that we went to Masungi Jigger Reserve. So we also tried to connect with other institution that actually works with preservations as well. So we also tried to look into that, and we went to Masungi with the MCAT team, with Yeye, Marianne, IC. And I think it was a good experience also to maybe acclimatize us with the project, because this is about also nature and our relationship with nature. So it's, because
Recording stopped.
Masumi J Reserve helps rebuild resilience to climate change by protecting and restoring the forests in the watershed and biodiversity. And Masumi J Reserve is actually a conservation model, which is, I think, if replicated, will be a really good model for the Philippines, because we can actually do it. So yeah, there's a really good biodiversity there. They really take care of the people, the communities that lives around there. So I was thinking, like, how do I actually visualize this project in visual representation? Because these are mostly abstract. Like climate change, you can only feel it, and you can only see it after disaster. Those effects, that's always what we see, right? Like how we can only see climate change after a disaster, after all the effects and the loss and the damage that it actually made. So I thought about tangible visual representations. So I went to revisit Ayala Museum, and they have those dioramas there, and I thought like, maybe how museums show abstract scenes from history, and these are like scenic models made by hand.
in scale to size up a memory. So I thought the idea of maybe using dioramas to the visual representation of this work, and I think and that is like 3D models. Since this project is online, so I thought like maybe I can make like a 3D world inside of it and do create like 3D models and scenes that can be derived from the research. So I thought, how can I actually size up the climate crisis? So I thought of several elements that actually made it up. But I always think about in the local context, or what is actually the climate crisis in the local context. So I use archetypes of objects or models for illustrating the climate crisis, which we call biome. So these biomes are actually explorable terrains that constitute the tableau of archetypes, media, and links. So there's the tropical climate forensics concentrates on 7 biomes, and that makes up the Philippine climate crisis. So based on the research that I did and a lot of thinking that I did, so I sized it up to 7, which I think is the most essential component of the Philippine climate crisis. So these are 7 are actually the worlds that I am trying to also develop. Also think about how to make it interactive or in a way or interesting in to present it, like how of course it could be just like an object and like a 3D model, but how can it actually interact with the visual. So I thought of making it in a video game format. If you're familiar with Unity 3D for WebGL, this is the platform that we use for this project. And it's so the term is gamified. It's not a video game, but we're using a video game format, which is a sandbox. So the sandbox doesn't really it doesn't have like a goal, for you to finish it, but you can explore it in a terrain. If you're familiar with Journey, that game Journey, yeah, I think that's also one of the prompts of it and one of the reference for this project as well. Because I think Journey is also about just exploring the sites and yeah, just it's just exploring terrains. So it also with this project we use a lot of terminologies with the video game like gamified, biomes. So we actually have a different set of language that we use and apply to this project as well. So the seven biomes are, we start with ENIT, which is in the form of a heat box model. So how do you actually illustrate heat? So I thought about it and I thought like heat is the main driver of the climate change, because when you control heat, you can actually generate energy. If it's too much, if it's not enough, it actually controls everything. And in Tagalog, it's called kulob, which is like repressed heat. And when repressed heat, it actually tries to escape every time. And this is, I think, the gesture for me, like how heat actually is being repressed or being controlled. So it's actually about accumulating energy as well. So we start with the ENIT biome, which we already released on the website, and then we also had the observatorio, which is about mapping the scientific foundation of the project. So I think for now, I try to go into the scientific level of the work, and later on to be explored in a more deeper level. So right now, I think what we release the init and the observatory biome is to see the overview of the project. If you can explore it later, the website. The next one is Bagyo, which we're going to release in October. So Bagyo is also for me is like a vortex of consequences. So I think we'll also explore on a lot of consequences of the storm. As you know, storms or typhoons are actually brought by heating of ocean. So the warmer the ocean gets, the more water it goes up into the clouds, and the stronger the typhoons are. So I think that process alone actually explains why do we have stronger typhoons now, like heavier and then longer, because the heavier the clouds are, the slower it moves as well. So the next one we're going to release is on November is Gubat. Gubat is an important component of the climate, our climate systems, because these actually regulates our climate also, and trying to also complete the ecosystem of our climate system. So for Gubat, we actually scaled up Sierra Madre Mountains, which is I think one of the most important mountain range in the Philippines, which is they call the backbone of the Philippines. It also serves as the wall to protect us from the typhoon. But actually, there's a lot of damage being done to it. And later on, we will explore a lot of things about land use, or such as mining or deforestation. So, and how it actually affects our climate. So yeah, and then forests are actually safeguards against climate extremes. So the more forests we have, actually there's a lot more balance to our climate as well. So it's very important to also go into this. And we're also featuring Masumi J Reserve with this biome. And yeah, so trying to also focus on Sierra Madre as a model for our climate control as well. So the next one is too big. So too big, yeah, it's water, it's fluid, it's ambiguous. It's also a force. It's actually a venue. It's very uncertain, and we are living in an archipelago which is surrounded by water. And I think it's a very close element to us that we are surrounded by water. And I think one of the main element also in the climate crisis is water, which we always hear about sea level rise, that some islands will actually submerge into water like in 10 years from now. There are actually actual reports and studies that some islands in the Philippines will completely submerge in 10 years. And these are actually alarming. And yeah, I think I'm going to also discuss here maybe a lot of also of poetry about water, our memory of about water, and yeah, how is actually water vital element in our life. So the next one is Vulcan. So we're trying to also map out volcanic activities or Vulcan as a biome, because I think in the local or in the Philippine context, volcanoes are a big part of our life as well. Because like we just had like eruption in Taal, lately, and I think it's actually part of the ecosystem of the climate crisis. Because actually, when volcanoes erupt, it actually makes the world cooler. Like in 1990, when the Mount Pinatubo erupted, it actually brought the climate uh, extremes were pushed back for 5 years. So parang na ano siya, lumamig yung mundo, and then it actually helped balance the climate. So it's like it actually helps, like how these systems are actually in place. Like the natural system has its own way of balancing it as well. So yeah. So we for Vulcan we're focusing on four volcanoes, which is Pinatubo, Taal, Hibok-Hibok, and Mayon. So these four I think are significant volcanoes in the Philippines, and yeah, we're trying to map out that with this biome as well. So the last one will be Comunidad, which is about the human experience. So I think all of these non-human world that we actually interact with, we have to understand like how is our relationship with it. So I think for the last one, I want to end up with discussing the human experience, and which is like a lot actually. So I'm trying to focus on very what makes us human actually, and what is our relationship with the climate or with nature. And these are the model that I did here is in Manila. It's called Baseco Compound. If you're familiar, it's somewhere one of the projected that will submerge into water in the future as well, because it's actually a coastal city, a slum area. So yeah, so when if you've seen the website, you can visit it at forensico.ph. Yeah, the main reason for me to do this way is the game examination and exploration. So I think interesting to me because it's actually blurs a lot of context, like how Philippines should look like or how tropical should look like. So trying to like shed off all of these preconceived images that we have of the Philippines, and it's as you see, it's very generic in a way, but still it's discussed Philippines as the site for climate crisis. Yeah. So yeah, I think the project also required us to use different set of language, like our technical terms, like we used biome, avatars, what else, terrain. So these are actually gameplay or video game words that we applied into the project as well. So I'm gonna show you some developments that we did through the work. So at first, we actually tried to create like an avatar to it, but a first person avatar. But I thought like I think it's too literal. But I wanted more less um, of a human experience. So we kind of like so we actually didn't go with this just to show you the developments. So I'm trying to also how we actually created this visual prompts are actually from we gather a lot of data. So these are actually from Google Earth's GIS, which is a geographic information systems. So these are actually actual data of from the maps, and we generated a 3D render out of it. So yeah, so these are the Vulcan. So we try to like put it in one platform, which is together, and we try to like create like scenic uh, lighting, and then which explore how to create the terrains inside of it. So So it's like I actually don't want to make it look like the usual Filipino look, like like a lot of palm trees, or maybe the colors are not as bright, or there's not much really a direct representation of what a Philippine terrain should look like. So trying to like reimagine what a Philippine terrain could look like. So another one like this one, this is the Baseco compound GIS. So actually, when you go to Google Earth, you can actually extract the geographic data of a place, and we got this one, and it actually, I think my idea was, like, to illustrate data the most accurate it can be. And I think using this open source data is actually, in a way, also an art for me, an art gesture for me. Because, yeah, I think when you extract these models, there's actually visual representation of this places. So we also did a lot of data mining, or we also use sound data from the sound you were hearing earlier. Those are actually sound data from NASA. So there's like sound data from a satellite, from recorded forests, which is actually open to use from NASA. So I think the Philippines doesn't have its own sound data library. So there's no we tried to find one, but we can't find one. So yeah, I think we can work on that later on. So the project centers on the use of data as well as material for the work. So it's from the research, also from, there's a lot of references that are actually from data. So it also wanted to show that in this project, that that data can actually be used as material for the work of art. So another one is the Gubat, which is we modeled from the Sierra Madre. So this is the GIS data from Google Earth that we try to also create and use as the terrain for Gubat. So yeah, these are inside those biomes, or those avatars are actually terrains that you can explore. So yeah, again, I wanted to create it in a video game manner, which is could be nondescript, or it's like another world, but still talking about the Philippine context. So and also try to like play on that idea of what a Philippine context look like. So I think this one, or for this project, I really tried to like minimize the visual quality to it, that it's simple but also uh, direct, and it's not I mean, it's very elaborate, but the thought of illustrating a Filipino terrain is not the usual. It's kind of like like when you look at it, it could be a universal terrain that it can be everywhere or anywhere as well. So this is from the Enet biome. And then inside of it is some of the archetypes that I put inside. Is one is this, which is ang krisis ng klima ay krisis ng kultura, which is actually from a research that I did, which is from the UN Human Rights Office about climate, culture, and cultural rights. So they actually recognize this problem as a cultural problem, because how do we actually look at it? It's actually a problem, and there's a lot of uncovering that we needed to do to actually understand what this is all about. And I think that that report actually informed me that yeah, this is actually a valid point that don't actually discuss a lot, and it's it's because maybe this is also not being seen. It's hard to see like how can you see it in a vantage point that it's actually about culture, So just to get some share some readings that I had. So one of in the report actually they cited that culture is a common good that broadens everyone's capacity to shape his or her own future. So all individuals are vehicles of culture as well as participants in this development. So culture itself is a process that allows us to understand, interpret, and transform reality. So it's I think this paragraph for me is very powerful in a way that it actually connects to what I wanted to do with this project is actually to look at the climate crisis in a different lens, in an art lens, but also recognizing scientific research or science in itself. So science work is actually a huge part of it as well. And why we're doing all of this is actually about there's a science about it that we have to tackle about and how do we actually integrate this into our cultural practices, And yeah, I think culture is art and culture is a big part of it. And what we don't realize is this that art and culture can actually be a huge part of it. It can see it in a different way, and then maybe we can actually do something about it. So yeah, this is one view of the observatorio. So if you look online, there's in the website, in the platform, we actually map out the whole infrastructure that we have here in the Philippines, and I tried to map out from pre-colonial to the present to the future. So how do we actually work with the weather? I tried to scale it up in one plane and then trying to illustrate, different types of thinking. Like there's a pre-colonial way of weather forecasting through mapping of stars. There's also like one story about when Yolanda hit back in 2013. There was one story of the locals that before the Yolanda hits the Gian summer, they saw the moon with a halo, with a huge halo, and they thought that that was a warning sign for them because I think it was recurring. So every time there's a storm, they actually see a moon with the halo, and this is another way of looking at it. I'm not sure it's scientific, but I think it's also traditional knowledge that I'm also trying to also recognize in this project as well. So it's for me, it's like an interesting story to actually tell like that there's a lot of way that we can actually look at it. So yeah, if you explore in this biome, there's also about about infrastructure. There's a lot about colonialism, um, different types of resiliency. So it's also try to also like map those out, and maybe in a way it can interact or interconnect with each other. So yeah, to last week we actually had a public program, and we did a tour of the Manila Observatory, and it was raining actually that day, and it was actually a good one. So you actually this project will have a lot of public programs as well that will touch on both art and science. And yeah, I think I just wanted to like also show this that we are also on the ground. We're trying to connect art and science as well in ways that we think will be viable as well, like in through public programs. And one of these is actually the tour of Manila Observatory, and we're actually planning more later on. So I just want to show you. So this project is actually a 1 year engagement with MCAD, and we're only like maybe 2 out of 7 biomes. So we're also releasing more throughout the year and early next year. And I would just want to show you one of the processes that I'm making right now. Like this one is an open pit mine model that I'm trying to create as a diorama or also an analogy between mining and knowledge production. So trying to like dig deeper maybe in a way, like open pit mines are actually the worst kind of human activity or land use because it's actually irreversible. And yeah, it's actually like you're trying to dig holes or bore holes into the earth, and I think it's really like like it's so bad actually because you're trying to extract the essential minerals inside of it, and this cannot be like cannot be replaced or rehabilitated. So I thought that these are actually one of the most tangible things that I can actually talk about later on, which is will be in the Gubat biome because these are activities in or land use. So yeah, this is a model based on the Pidio mines, which is in Nueva Vizcaya in the Sierra Madres, which is one of the also most controversial mining areas in the Philippines. So as you know, when before Duterte stepped down, they actually approved a lot of land mining to continue, and one of those is the Pidio, and the Pidio is actually an indigenous area, so there's a lot of people got displaced, a lot of people got got sick. They have like bad water. They have like their whole system of living got disturbed, and this is actually happening in a lot of areas, not just in the Sierra Madres. There's also a lot in Mindanao, with the Lumads, and these are actually alarming, and yet we don't actually see it, or we don't know how to like, these are actually about also political and like there's a lot of layers to it that we have to uncover and to have to see it. So yeah, so later on, actually, this project we're trying to also create like maybe and looking into creating a physical dioramas of the climate crisis. And I just want to show some readings as well. Like with mining, there's also an analogy between mining and knowledge production. So this gesture of mining is actually about can be about knowledge production also, and then it can also be about creating these dioramas that that we can show in a more tangible way. So this actually wanted to connect a lot of thought processes that I'm still working on, and then there's a lot of analogies that are trying to extract from this as well. So this not. I think for me, I want to look at it in various ways and trying to connect all of those. And I think it's gonna take more processes for me, and then maybe a lot of thinking as well. Because when you think about the climate crisis, it's very diverse. It's huge. It's planetary. It's affects everyone, and it's like you can feel it. yet you can't actually see it. It's just so hard to see or understand what is actually going on in a global or in a planetary scale. So yeah, I think one of the impulse that I had also in this project is about that. And, the next one, we're also partnering up with a lot of other institution. So this one is we're going to partner with the Institute of Climate and Sustainable Cities, which is they work with a lot. They created this book called Harvest Moon, and then there's a lot of poetry and literature that was made to illustrate or to illustrate the climate crisis, which I think is very important as well. You know, like this is actually also looking at it in a different way. So later on, we'll also use or collaborate with them, and then we're trying to also collaborate with a lot of other people in science and art and other like policy making as well. So trying to look at it as like building a world together. So I just want to show this one's one of the screen caps from the video game, which is from the observatory biome. So like have to have this question like how do we actually navigate the future and how do we tell the story of a scorched earth with all this science. So there's a lot of thinking, like how art and science can actually go together or not, or so there's also like analysis, like on how can we actually see it, or how can this be effective in a way. So like when you see this, we may need to become planetary to be human as a praxis, a means to engage with the processes that sustain and perhaps remake our ways of being human. So I think a lot of this also requires a lot of introspection, how to look inside of things, like how to actually see things, or it's should could be different right now. Like it should be different. It should be in another way, or maybe we should actually have to change our way of thinking or seeing things. So I just also want to share some readings from this is actually from a report from the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change about colonialism. And it says that the vulnerability of ecosystems and people to climate change differs substantially among and within regions. So, driven by patterns of intersecting socio-economic development and sustainable ocean and land use, inequity, marginalization, historical and ongoing patterns of inequity, such as colonialism and governance. So, colonialism actually is a huge factor to what climate change is now, because this more advanced country are actually extracting resources from countries like ours.
And when you see like mining corporations here actually from other countries, because these are actually being sold from outside the Philippines. And yeah, in particular, historic and ongoing forms of colonialism have helped to increase the vulnerability of specific people and places to the effects of climate change. So so we're actually at the receiving end of the climate crisis, and I think what most scientists are working on now is to create more evidence that we are actually having a climate injustice, that we are actually not, we don't deserve this. We don't deserve stronger typhoons. We don't deserve unpredictable weather. And how do we actually say that to a country like, like, or maybe a place like Europe or the United States, which is using a lot of energy for them to operate. So there's a lot of, these are actually colonial action that we need to also discuss. So there's it's not just about fossil fuels, who's using what. It's actually about the bigger scale of colonialism, which has been happening historically. So this is our system actually that is in place that we are. It's so hard to actually to change. This is it's actually a challenging. It's a challenge for us to actually mitigate or discuss this because this is bigger. It's actually bigger in scale. It's the planetary is discussed as a figure of massiveness. So its invocation suggests total dominion. So the rolling out of systems that hold the planet and of all of its entities in a space of complete capture. So like when you see it in totality, these spaces are actually driven by colonial action. So yeah, like the Queen just died last night, and I think there's a lot of discussion about colonialism. Like it's an end of an era, it's an end of a monarchy because it's actually hurt a lot of nations that they were colonizing. Because these countries are actually being stolen. They got abused actually, and there's a lot of discussion now that this colonial action that they did is actually hurting the world. So people are actually divided now, which is either to mourn her death and not the empire. They were saying like that, and I think that's also we're actually entering a more complex world that we have to think about more than just like looking at uh, one angle. And I think that her death is actually symbolic because it could actually be an end of an era. It could be it could be an end of colonial thinking maybe. And yeah, I think I don't know. It could yield like good and bad effects later on.
So yeah, I think also in this project, I try to uncover like or try to think, how my practice can actually be effective in a way, or maybe how can I actually um, explore on it. So I read this essay by Jennifer Gabrice, which is about becoming planetary. You know, she said here that being planetary as praxis suggests that it might be possible to rework the usual approaches to human and environments, as well as to propose new conditions for the planetary media.
So I think a lot of thinking that's happening right now is like we're trying to repair. It's always about repairing now, and because there's so much damage that had happened from the past. So I think also for me, I think the work that I do now is also in that thinking that maybe I want to contribute in that repair. Like how to actually help or how to actually offer another way of thinking of preparing things. So and she also said here that the globe is actually in our computers, which is I think very real as well because we're always online now, and I think most of our lives are online now because people because of the pandemic also, and we heavily rely on computers or mobile devices and internet for connection. These are actually these are not real connections. These are actually technological connections that these are aided by technology, and this is not natural. So I think we're being more less and less maybe connected in a way. Even if we thought like it's easier to connect now, I think it's actually not. Like it's more ambiguous. It's not real. Actually, it's not real connection. So I think what she was trying to say here is, how can we be planetary or think planetary? Because I think she said that the planetary resists representation, and the point is not to generate an evasive picture, but rather to thwart an engagement with the planetary that hinges on uniform epistemic representation. So what the planetary is about is thinking as a whole, but also being also seeing it in a very in a totality way. Like, how do you actually see things now should be different? Like, yeah, but she was saying that but it might be possible to rework the usual approaches to humans and environments, and that gesture, I think, could be the answer to it. I don't know, maybe. So yeah, I think that's what she was telling about, is how can we actually rethink all of these things that we do, and it's actually should be in a planetary scale, and it will be a challenging one. So yeah, yeah, I think actually this is the last slide, and yeah, I think the project for me is trying to look at it in a Philippine context, but also in a totality kind of way, and I think that this project can be so much more, or it could, I don't know, maybe this is it's open-ended for me for now, and yeah, so we're also releasing the rest of the biomes throughout the year until early next year, which is I think will be interesting, because as I go along the project, it's also trying to also examine my practice also as an artist, and trying to also look at it in a different way. And yeah, I think the Tropical Climate Forensic Project is not just about informing people, but also maybe trying to look at it on a different way. Like, this is what I see from it that can actually, I don't know, maybe help or maybe nudge another thinking on seeing this. So yeah. So because I think right now we're just obsessed now, like how things are going to end. We're just like we're always we think how things can actually go bad, and I think that's always the messaging that I see lately. So I think I just want to end this with this video that I made entitled "Accumulating" or "Pagliliko," which is just the end part of it. This is just the end part of it, yeah. So the question is, is this something that we can solve, or we just wait to the end? So I think I think the thinking right now is like that for me. Mm.
Ang wakas ay hindi kailanman darating. Ngunit ito ay payak na pagkakaantala, o mas akong sabihin, natamo na.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Derek. With that was so incredibly thorough. I think I heard some bits of the work that we've not been able to discuss. So I actually wanted to ask Derek, maybe he could share with us, because I think most of you are art students, about how we put together in a bit more detail the project, because we worked with The project was produced, really everything was online. So we had a 3D designer whom we engaged with. He's a student. Yes, he's a student. And also we have a web designer who also worked with us, but we never met any of them. So it was all online. And then we also worked with a sound designer who used sound data from also online, no? And things like NASA stuff. So I think it would be interesting for Derek to maybe go more in depth about how the actual terrain of tropical climate forensics was produced. And then after he explains that, maybe we'll get a couple of questions from you guys, if you have any questions you'd like to ask. And then I think Mary Ann or Cheryl will go around and ask and collect the questions.
Yeah, so I think when we were making the website, we were looking for someone who are actually work with Unity 3D for WebGL, and that's specifically for gaming. That's actually a gaming platform. And so we found Bruce Allery, which is we haven't met this project. This actually affects us as well in a very personal level. And then I have Mario Consunji do the sound design. So it's also, he's an electronic artist. He do a lot of electronic work. And for this project, we decided maybe we can use like sound data. And we actually looked for Philippine sound data, which we didn't find. There's actually none. So I think there's no library for that, but I think it would be interesting to actually have one. And we found one in NASA, which they have like an open source sound data library. And these are actually sound from satellites, from the weather stations that they have. And I think, what else? I also had a research assistant, Maria Fe Cleope, and she helped me a lot with the research as well, because these are actually a lot. Like maybe I was reading like more than 100 papers like that, and we also met with a lot of organizations and government units like PAGASA, Climate Change Commission, because we're just trying to explore on how we can actually collaborate with them as well.
So if there are questions, anyone?
I'm Robin.
Hi, Robin.
Is it all right if I ask two questions? Okay. So my first question is, what's the hardest part in the process of creating your projects, and is it the artistic part or the scientific part? Like, what part do you find you have a hard time with?
Well, I think the scientific part, because I'm not a scientist. So when you read this paper, there's a lot of terminologies that I actually don't understand.
So I have to like also look into it more deeply, because the artistic part is very open. So it can be anything, like. But when you say science, it's very exact. So you have to actually check over and over again if you're saying it right. So like there's a lot of check on that. Yeah. Yeah, and then also I work with the scientists as well, which is different for me. Like working with scientists, they have different language, they different culture.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, from your first exhibit, which is Sacred Geometry, to your recent project, I would like to ask how you grew as an artist and as a person, and how that impacted your vision in art.
Yeah, nice that you actually mentioned it. It was like a 7-year-old project. Yeah, I think Yeah, I think I was always interested in exploring the science of things, but in an art way. And I think, because I think art for me is open, like it can be anything, right? And I think from that idea, I really, I wanted to use science as the material for the work. And, why not, right? Because, this is, this could actually be something new or different. And yeah, I think from that project to now, it's actually also so different. And I think it's more complex. I mean, I think my thinking now is more complex in a way it's maturity is also, like the way of thinking things are not as simple as it is from before. Because I think sacred geometry, that work is, for me, that's actually a simple work for me. It's just, trying to, take this concept of sacred geometry, of taking shapes from nature. And I think I did, I took shapes from shapes that are not, you can scale, like dust or like, like particles. So yeah, I think that's also one way of, trying to see the impossible through that work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Robin.
Aside from Unity, what other programs were used for creating the environments, if there were other programs?
Oh yeah. So for the technical, this is a technical question actually. So the Unity is what we use for the platform. So it's a gaming platform. For the 3D modeling, we use Blender and Cinema 4D. So yeah, we have Justin who makes all those models from scratch actually. So some of them are from data, like the volcanoes, are actually from geographic information systems. And so yeah, we're trying to integrate data into modeling as well, or these are also our way of visualizing data in a way as well.
Hello, I'm Bea.
Hi, Bea.
I have a question. There are a lot of various problems that the world is facing right now. Why did you specifically choose climate change?
I think I didn't really choose it, but it's like this is what is in front of me, or this is what I'm experiencing, and I'm trying to like understand more of it through my work. So I think in 2013, yeah, the work that I did is actually after Yolanda. So trying to illustrate what a storm can look like in an artwork. So I think that work started from that maybe, but yeah, I'm trying to also dig deeper into it as I go along. Like I also had this project that I simulated weather inside an artwork that is actually relies on data triggers online. So this is like a simulated forest that I made, and that has actual climate data inside of it. So when it rains outside, it actually rains inside the artwork. So kind of, trying to emulate that idea of creating your own weather systems inside the work as well. So yeah, I think kind of developed from that as well.
Hello.
My
What's your
name
name?
is Iggy po.
Hello, Iggy.
Yung tanong ko po is, what motivated you to go into this project po? Simple lang po.
What motivated?
Opo.
CAA. No, yeah, because
I think when Ye approached me with the project, she saw the project with SM, right? The one in kayamanan ng Pilipinas, which is maps out no in like maps out Philippine indigenous plants with the weather simulation inside. So we think we started talking about it on that work. And then I also had the Manila Observatory residency. which actually I think also one of the groundwork for this project. Because yeah, this I started intense research from that one. So yeah, I think those are the motivation to this project.
Thank you, Paul.
I have a question, sir. I'm just curious.
Online.
On average, how much time does it take to finish an artwork like that?
Yeah, it actually depends. Like when I work, actually, the thought process is so long for me. Like like I always take notes and takes bits and pieces from a lot of
It's like, sir,
things.
sometimes I spend hours just on a single piece. So It's
Yeah.
not even like that big.
Yeah, actually, some take.
Okay, sir, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Mark. So, with the presentation, I come to realize that this is also a project, passion project in a sense, and a scientific way. Is this a project to inform or to express, or is it to both? And has this been your first project in a topic like this or in a subject like this, sir?
Yeah, I think it's both actually, because yeah, well, science is to inform, right, and art is to express. But I think I don't want to limit that gesture to those, both art and science. Can actually both as well. Like science can actually be creative sometimes, and art can actually be exact as well. And I think we have to change that thinking that we're only limited to this. And I think I'm trying to do that with this project, which is I'm trying to do both, like to inform and to express art and science together. And yeah, I think I think it's actually both. Yeah, and yeah, in terms of informing, maybe right now the biomes we release right now is actually more to inform because it's just trying to lay the groundwork for the project, which is a scientific research as well. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Lihan. I wanted to know, like, because I looked at your previous work and it's all mostly traditional. It's paintings and sculptures. I wanted to know what inspired you to make something like this. It's like an interactive project, a game sort of, as opposed to something like another painting or sculpture.
Yeah, I think most of my project is exploring technologies as well. So yeah, it's like every time I do a project, I try to use a different technology maybe or a different program. And if I had the resources to it, I'll actually do it. And because these are technology, you need infrastructures for this to make it work. And I think the opportunity came from me from MCAD, which has the resources for this project. And I thought of making this project for this one because I actually have like a lot of ideas using different kind of technology. And I think this one fits MCAD perfectly because it's online and yeah, it requires a lot of interactivity as well. And I thought of making a game or a gamified platform for this one, which is through Unity 3D.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Derek. This is Ada, and I would first like to start off by congratulating you and the team for the launch. And I'm really excited to see the other biomes throughout the year, especially the Baguio one that I had the opportunity of contributing to. Oh, okay. So the combination of the objective field of science and subjective field of art is such a juxtaposition that not a lot of people, artists especially, venture into. As an artist, did you find it difficult to immerse yourself from such an objective field? And was there any hindrance in your collaboration with the scientists? Yeah, actually, this is a good question because yeah, it's not actually easy because I've actually been trying to connect with scientists for so long now. There's from before there was supposed to happen before, but like in trying to connect with UP physics before, but it didn't happen because I think there's there's a gap between art and science, and
That is language, and that is culture, way of seeing things. Actually, when I first went to MO, they were asking me like what I'm gonna do, what am I doing in a scientific institution? Because I think for art for them is just it's anything, or it could be like just a painting or a sculpture. And I think what I did with this project is to open up the possibility that it can be everything. And yeah, it was difficult like at first because I'm also trying to balance the art aspect of it or the science aspect of it. And I think when you look into other artists doing this kind of thing, you actually get it. Or if you like read more about this art science projects, collaborations, it actually opens up more ideas and how you actually see things. And yeah, I think this is what this project did to me, is actually see that as well. And yeah, yeah, I think it's also about balancing both fields as well. And yeah, with the collaboration with the scientists, it actually also a hard one at first because yeah, they're very busy, and this kind of work you really have to explain to them because you have to lay the groundwork for it and should have a foundation to make it work, because you also try to establish a relationship with them, not just like in a work sense, but also trying to understand each other. And I think the last tour of Manila Observatory was really great because everyone's like we're able to present the project to them, and they were able to present to us what they are doing. So it's in a way it's actually a good way to understand each other as well. And we actually found a lot of ways to finally work together after doing the residency. Yeah.
One last question for online. During your collaboration with the different research agencies, what kind of feelings stirred up when you found out about their feelings about the drastic climate change? You mentioned that the climate crisis equates to culture crisis. Which part of our local culture do you think we can change to improve?
Yeah, so we did like a lot of meetings with a lot of agencies, like government agencies, NGOs, climate activists, to see what we can actually work with or collaborate with, and also with the scientists. What kind of feelings stirred up when you found out? Yeah, actually, when I found out that most of the Philippines will submerge. The nearest one is actually 10 years from now. And I thought like maybe I should move out of here. That's my first thought. And it's actually scary. Like, when you're confronted with data or scientific evidence, I actually saw a lot of evidence that this could actually be happening, which it could happen like in the near future. And yeah, I got so scared about it. And so my question is what am I gonna do? Or is this work even going to be relevant to that? Or I don't know, like will it actually help? I don't know. Maybe also it's like it's very personal as well, like how when I saw this project taught me a lot about listening to people as well, and yeah, those scientists, and trying to establish relationship with them. And I think that's it's very important as well, because when I say about the climate crisis, is actually a crisis of culture. It's actually how we see things and how we actually build relationship with people. And you know. So I think, you know, like an institution like MCAD can actually establish institutional solidarity to other agencies like, you know, like maybe Pagasa or Manila Observatory. It's actually a scientific institution. So, you know, this idea of openness is, I think, we don't have here in the Philippines, and maybe I'm trying to like make that visible into this project, that, you know, we can actually make things work if we actually be open about things and trying to listen and trying to be more open to the possibility of art, that it can be go out in a studio or in a gallery space, or it can be in a website, or, you know, it can be everywhere actually. So I think that's also my thinking, that, you know, the very root of this crisis could be also about our openness, or not, we're not being open about ideas that can actually change things around. Yeah. Thank you everyone for attending.
And we look forward to the rest of the bios opening. And yeah, we're all very excited. So thanks so much, Derek. And I'd like to thank everyone for being here. You know, I hope you click on the on the app. I hope you enjoy it, and please do give us feedback if you have any comments. And it's all online. No, thank you so much.